Pick up this cushion here, the one right in front. 74 underneath that. It's because there's in-floor heat.
I saw that. I just saw it.
It's just starting to come on.
That's great.
It's not entirely all going, but at least it's going enough, so it makes a difference between.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the first thing to come.
Are you warming up? I'm roasting.
Yeah, boy. Roasting. That's a new concept in
Are
here.
you warming up?
I'm fine. Yeah.
So it was noisy. It was going buzz, 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 buzz. Okay. We're back.
So now we have cultivated the karmic imprint of snacking and talking. Yeah, we're
Yeah,
getting better and better, I see.
becoming a habitual pattern. Could be worse.
What's on your minds? Have you considered the difference between studying something and contemplating it just in order to sort of know or kind of an idea about it or gain a philosophical understanding versus actually doing it in order to really change how your experience unfolds? It's different. It's different. There's a difference between adopting something as a kind of declaring that something is a philosophically valuable or philosophically articulate. There's a difference between that and actually allowing it to really penetrate enough and repeatedly and deeply enough so that actually it forms the basis for some kind of transformation. It leaves a karmic imprint, so to speak. And whether you approach this from a more meditative side or a more analytical side, however it is, it does require some energy and some real kind of honest engagement. So something that Michael brought up the other day, and I thought it was worth emphasizing.
I'm tempted to ask how you delineate those.
The
Contemplation and study.
I wasn't particularly making a distinction there.
You were not?
I wasn't. Just in term, there is a way that we could engage in either one, where we would just sort of become familiar with an idea and think we knew the information, and then from there say, "Oh, yeah, I'm a believer in such and such,"
Oh,
and then we kind of let it go. And that has some impact, but it's kind of a light impact
right.
compared to going farther with it.
So I appreciate what you opened with tonight about increasing the intensity of awareness, and because that's kind of a kind of an ongoing theme for me is being leery of, falling into dullness and sleepiness and part of that, it's sort of have this nagging fear or doubt that I'm wasting my time. I want to get the best use I can out of every minute of practice. And that's kind of that's kind of another question. But anyway, I was just wondering if you had any further or care to reiterate any instructions about how to fend off dullness or heighten awareness.
Mm. This is something that I think is of, it's important as we go along in meditation. It can be possible to just sort of drift along with our practice and not really take advantage of the opportunity that we have when we set aside the time. I think the most important thing is the notion of short but frequent sessions is a really kind of a critical piece of it. They don't have to be short, but to do something throughout the day with some real clarity, even just a few minutes of real clear intention throughout the day, punctuates our experience in a way that's different than sitting for a half an hour and maybe checking in kind of with a little bit of verve at the beginning and then kind of and so it's just a lot easier, strategically speaking, to keep track of what we're up to with a shorter period of time. And we can, if we're going to sit for half an hour, we can even sort of make sure that we check in on a regular basis so that you can get all kinds of fancy meditation timers and whatnot. Something goes blink every 5 minutes and you go, it's 9:05. Where is my mind? Just like the old public service announcements. Do you know where you're? It's 11 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? That was back in the day. Yeah, back in the day. I don't think they do that anymore. But that's one of the opportunities of having something that pops up. You can see exactly what's going on right now. But the pattern of beginning with enough energy and clarity so that you really get in contact with whatever the object of meditation is. You really are there with it. It's really direct experience. It's not sort of a vague idea of, oh yeah, there's my breath. You're really there with that experience as it unfolds moment to moment. Just whatever that experience is. Letting go of the label, going beyond that, and then allowing the mind to just relax directly into that. There is a balance, or kind of a rhythm, between adding some energy and then letting go. And that, I think, that's an important piece of it over the long haul, is to bring that back over and over again. Do you have anything to add, either of you?
Just a little bit to say that for me, it helps me to redouble my commitment to letting go of what's of distraction. Because if I'm not kind of, that is what can help set the stage then for being able to be more on my meditation. But if I haven't, it's helpful to kind of remember, like, this time is precious. I really do want to set aside. I got a million things going on in my mind, but I really do want to set this aside right now. And so sort of setting the stage with that at the beginning can help me. Because then the meditation there's an opening for it to be there, and then it can be actually interesting in itself, rather more interesting than the distractions. And then it's a lot easier to stay with it and work with it.
Everything that they have both said, and for me, when it's flat, it's often because I also haven't done a very meaningful refuge bodhicitta at the beginning. I don't mean a long one, but I mean really getting in touch with kind of that request for help, in essence, kind of a request to the teacher, the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha. So I get a sense I'm not there by myself in solo doing this activity. But so the refuge part, but also the bodhicitta part, like, well, why am I here? Why am I doing shamatha? Because it can be so dry if I don't have a sense that if I don't have a sense of arousing that bodhicitta motivation. I'm here to learn about my mind in order to be more useful to other beings. It can be that quick, just one sentence. But I want to make a sentence that I get in touch with. Then it puts the meaning in it for me. Then I drop all that. Then you don't think about that, but you're within that container. The same with the dedication at the end. So those bookends make my shamatha more potent. Yeah.
Another dimension of setting the context for our practice is appreciating both what's possible if we really invest energy in the practice, reviewing what actually can happen, and getting in touch with that. And sometimes that's hard because as we're just practicing day by day, we're told not to be constantly looking at the spiritual odometer to see how far we've gotten. But we do need to recall our motivation, recall what the potential is, and also recall the potential for what happens when we just take our foot off the gas and just kind of coast and let the steering wheel go where it may. So the four thoughts that turn the mind are quite good for that, in terms of reminding ourselves that the situation that we're in is really kind of miraculously opportune in the big picture. Very fleeting, and that what we do with it is of consequence, and the consequences, if we don't act skillfully, include just more confusion. So really keeping that kind of clearly in mind, then, oh, this session right now is actually my opportunity to create the imprint that will be helpful in the long run. So that can kind of also knock the cobwebs out a little bit. Those all have to be very personal reflections. They have to be really exactly in your own terms. To a certain extent, just reciting the thing, whatever the summary of the four thoughts, the summary of refuge and bodhicitta, that can be a point of departure. But as you said, you have to really find your own words for it. See what your story really is. Just check your own story. The necessity to be kind of very honest about what we're up to. It's really important.
I was just going to add to that like I find for me that it's helpful for me to remember that if I don't train when I have the time, that life will give me a reason to train later when I don't have the time.
That's true.
Yeah.
So I mean, for me, it's like, if I want to be able to handle those things better when they do hit, I sort of feel like, well, I best train when I have the leisure to do so.
Yeah. Ryan, then Cynthia. That's the order in which I saw hands move.
Sometimes I have a little bit of difficulty with basically trying to relax versus just relaxing, or trying to pay attention to my thoughts rather than just paying attention. And the first way, the kind of trying comes along with a lot of like checking on whether I'm doing it or not, a lot of narratives and such. I just wondered if you have any tips on trying to get through to actually doing it rather than trying a little bit quicker, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, just if you want to relax, just try a little harder.
See where that goes.
There's actually the end of that sentence where that actually could be the truth is that you put a lot of energy in and then just abandon the effort. And that's part of what I was hoping for, without giving you too many clues about it, with the kind of, where is your mind? Come right back. Vividly, if it's gone, just really vividly come back and put some energy into being right there, and then just to drop the effort of holding it in that spot, and then just watch, just see how the mind moves.
I did notice that when I was trying to follow that instruction, just being kind of right on the spot to begin with, and actually having that strong attention. But then it you know, slides into the trying, or it slides into the
Yeah, it's a job to do then. Yeah, okay.
yeah, or kind of a questioning of whether it's happening or not. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's not a matter of questioning. It's just really a matter of just observing. Just the mind could move quickly from a sound to a thought to a sensation. Just being very simple about it. There's no. That's a piece of it. But in this case, this is very brief. Since we do turn relaxing into a job. We're so pathetic. We're just so good at getting in our own way. But the part of it is just doing that kind of thing over and over again. And then it becomes a little more natural. It's less of a big deal.
The other thing is, you know, you notice that you're trying. There may have been times in the past where you didn't notice you were trying. So, credit. and then in the noticing that, sometimes I go, well, what's that? I just say that word, what's that? And that seems to sort of poof it a little. What's trying? Is it like I'm doing this with this part and then doing something else with my shoulder? Because I found that that's being very helpful, that question, what's that, with sleepiness. Like I used to think there was pretty much nothing I could do with sleepiness. Like it just felt like it's got me, you know, and I just have to be in it till it's gone. And now I go, what is it? And it somehow, that's a contradiction to it. I don't even know, just that question is a contradiction to it. It must bring something in that's the opposing of it or something. But so whatever shows up, trying, sleepiness, grogginess, you know, what's that?
Yeah. Yeah, that just bringing your attention right at the trying instead of trying to get rid of the trying. None of these things in this vein are really done to get rid of something. That's you don't inquire of the sleepiness. What's this? In order to get rid of it.
Right.
Otherwise, it gets in the way of just the inquiry, just the turning the attention straight back into it. So turning the attention straight into the trying is actually part of just watching how the mind moves. That's just another way the mind moves.
Lots of times for me, in this kind of situation, I think about tightening and loosening in attention. And when I'm not being skillful with that, there's just these tricks that enter. It doesn't seem to be so simple anymore when there's narratives attached to it and such. But it just depends on the day. But thank you. It's been helpful.
It seemed like you started the Q&A by asking us a question. Studying or thinking, and I probably got it wrong, but I was hearing studying, thinking versus experiencing.
In this case, I was that's usually the thing that we'll be talking about. But in this case, it was approaching, whether it is study, contemplation, or or meditation with a notion of just sort of kind of, but particularly study and contemplation with just the notion of gaining information and sort of thinking about something versus doing it in a way that will really have impact, really go in. As so that was the distinction that I was making.
I guess I heard it the other way because the chances, the times when I get to do something that looks like thinking, but it's experiencing. Sometimes it's when Khenpo Kunga leads a teaching and we get to practice. Sometimes it's when this last 2 days when you were leading the Tonglen.
Go back and explain something that you said. You said that thinking becomes like...
Instead of thinking being what I normally describe as thinking, it's experiencing, except for if I tried to explain it to somebody, it would look like thinking. It would sound like thinking. And I'm often in that because when I do get to experience versus conceptual thinking, there's like this, you know, something that's beyond words. And so when Khenpo Lao will try to instruct about to experience and not think, it's when I get to do that, it's like, wow, what a difference. And so because of my always being, I like that, and I want to figure out how to do that, but it often seems like magic. I think maybe that's why I heard your question differently. Yeah.
Yeah, we always do hear what we would like to hear.
Well,
always,
it's also imprints of what we're open to hear.
Yeah. No, the experience that you're talking about, as I understand it, I think what you're talking about is actually being aware of thought as it arises. Is that it?
I can't put it in words, but it's closer to that than not.
Okay, that's fine.
But I think if I used an analogy, it's words. When early days meditating, I would realize, I was thinking something. And then it would reduce, and it was like, I would just use a label. And then it was just knowing, and I didn't even stop to put a label on it. And so I was seeing a progression toward that. But when I get into the experiencing thought versus thinking thought, that's still magic to me. Yeah. It's
possible to use thought itself as object of meditation. Basically, it comes under the category of using the moving mind as the object of meditation. And that's possible to cultivate. And that one, again, it's very important to cultivate that in very brief moments, because it's so easy to collapse into the construct of the story and be kind of sort of lost with it. So my rule of thumb for starting out is pay attention to thought for a brief enough time that it actually does not have enough time to turn itself into a story. the more we can do that, then the more we can relax with that movement without being trapped by it.
And grow familiar with that.
Yeah.
Grow familiar with the process.
Yeah.
Okay. Because the magic, where I notice it now, is it's easier to do when someone like Kempala or you are leading a guided meditation, because I'm not having to generate the thought to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so
It's a
this
different space.
working with just super brief. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Are you getting that?
I was gonna add to your comment, Cynthia. I found that like the more I train, there are things that are understandings that you can know, and you do know them, but if you try to put a word on it, like sometimes the words are there, stuff comes, and you're like, oh, you have like a sentence or an analogy, and it just kind of fits, and you can explain it to somebody else. But a lot of times I find that more and more there are things that you truly do know them, but if you try to put a word on it, it somehow lessens it. Because it's like, there's a Zen saying that a painting of a rice cake doesn't satisfy hunger. A rice cake is a picture. It doesn't actually fill you up and give you a meal, It's not like chips and salsa. I mean, it's these things, and at first this stuff really made me uncomfortable, because I like to write a lot of times and journal to express myself, and so not being able to put words on something was very concerning. It was like, I want to be able to say it somehow or express it, and over time I just kind of became more and more, I was like, well, it's okay to just know it, and if a way to say it comes, and if not, I'm just okay just knowing it, and not having to be able to try and stick it in a box of words, I guess. I don't know if that helps or not, but.
Yeah.
I think tagging onto that, what Sarah shared, is why when we have insightful experiences, it's good not to make a story out of them. I've both at times made a story out of it and told people, and you can feel almost immediately a flattening of it, of the power of it, They say just share it only with your root teacher, someone who can guide you, because otherwise, of course, the ego can grab it, the false ego, and I'm a big shot. I had this realization. Let me tell you what it looked like, and the lights and the music and the drama. But it just, the words do something and kind of imprison it or something, so they can flatten it out. Yeah. So it's just a common guide to not put that into words, or only with your teacher who can guide you and say, not so important. Oh yeah, that could be useful this way or that.
Yeah. There's something in the end of the Torch of Certainty, which I think is just, whatever the new title of the translation is. It talks about when you should teach. And one of the things that it says is that there's a certain point where you talk and it's actually not helpful to anybody. It's actually problematic because you don't have enough experience, enough background. And then it starts to shift. And it shifts to a point where, because of what you've studied, because of what you know, then for a while you can actually say something that benefits others, but in fact it undermines your own practice. there's this period, and it's only after only after quite some time where it's actually beneficial both to you and to others to teach. And I complained to Michael that I was quite certain I was in the second category, and he said, "Tough luck."
Yeah, he doesn't let you off the hook.
No. So,
When you say that.
you know, but I still think very much in that way, and it's and I can tell even if I'm in the week prior to a retreat or something like that, where my practice gets mixed with how will I could explain it like that. Even though there's something valuable arising, it's getting mixed with, this is how I could say it. So it actually cuts something off. So it's something to keep in mind. Something to keep in mind.
Thank you for doing it.
And yeah, I mean, it's our privilege too, of course, but as in wonderful. But I think one of the reasons I really trust these branches of Buddhism that I've been in for a while is no one teaches till the teacher says, "Will you do it?" And then nobody sets themselves up, as my teacher used to call the tea shop guru. She was, in India a lot, and in Nepal a lot, and she said, the tea shop guru, the one who every morning is at the tea shop holding forth about their realizations and their accomplishments. Because when you are asked and then you do it, the ego jumps up, and man, it's just, let's just say, it's a wonderful opportunity to see it. And I just finished leading these 2 days of Tonglen, and I'm exhausted, and I realized the exhaustion is not about leading the 2 days of Tonglen. That was joyous. The exhaustion is what Bill referred to the whole week before. The reputation jumping up, the planning jumping up, the fear jumping up, the happiness jumping up, just like, oh my God, like, these things popping up day and night in your head, and you just get worn out by them. So, but then you get to look and go, well, what was all that? Poof. So it's a great opportunity. And as Lama Michael said to me when I brought it to him not too long ago and said, "I'm exhausted, I don't like this," he said, "Zopa, you don't get away from it." You won't get away from it, just keep seeing it. Thank you, Lama Michael.
There's a corollary in this. I hope you all take advantage of whoever your mentors are. And in our relationship with our meditation mentors, our practice mentors, there is a sweet spot to be had between how often, in terms of how often we meet with them and talk. If we meet too often, we will get into the same thing that I was describing in terms of my experience preparing for all my meditation will go into, I should tell Lama so-and-so about this. I should tell him about this. It's like my whole day of practice is just trying to collect stuff to have some good lines to share when I meet with Lama. On the other side, if we go too long, then we have this arc of months or however long it is, where we actually have to synthesize this story we kind of make an abstract, kind of sort of like we're writing the Reader's Digest version of our spiritual life, and not actually kind of able to really give the flavor of it. And so there's too many chapters, there's too many things going on, and so someplace in there's a spot where things are fresh enough, but they're not kind of overwrought. So there's some period, whether it's weeks or a few months, something like that. It really depends also on your practice too. It could be at certain times that it's actually, you can go for several years and then just bing, there's the moment, there's the interview, the interaction, and it's just all, it's complete and it's fresh. But it's quite likely after several years you're saying, well, it was going pretty good for a while, and then it wasn't going so good for a while, and then it was going kind of good again, but for another reason, and then it wasn't going good. It's kind of like, oh, let's see, so what are we up to? What are we really up to? So part of that's just encouragement to take advantage of the opportunities that you do have. Mike.
I just would like to ask about the process of this meditation that I've been having this experience that like 2 years ago when I came here, or 2 or 3 years ago, I was like doing like, police watching myself, so something in order for like, kind of like a radar not to show up anything, and I thought, oh, maybe I was doing fine because nothing is showing up. But then later, I kind of noticed that, well, I am not relaxing at all. I'm like totally, like kind of being like a police and watching myself all the time. And then, okay, so this is not the right way of doing it. So, and then I started getting more and more relaxed, and my question is that is there like okay, so I just wanna know if this is I am doing okay or not. In my case, when something is coming up, and if I get a little bit lazy, and then I started following or creating the story, and then it goes on, but when I have a little bit mental, like kind of like acuteness or something, and when something comes up, I can see, and then when I look at it, I just don't see anything, and I'm like, what happened? And then after maybe a few seconds or several seconds, something else comes up, or maybe for some time I can be a little bit like nothing is coming up, and so it's this like I don't know how to say it, but in different degree of mental acuteness when you are practicing the meditation. Like you cannot be too lazy. If you are too lazy and then you started, whatever comes up, you started following the story. But you cannot be also too uptight. Then nothing. You don't let anything to come up.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to, you could take a sponge in your hand, which could easily soak up water. You could put your hand, and you could squeeze it so hard that you could put your hand underwater and take it back out, and it'd still be dry.
Yeah.
This is like the way too tight,
Okay.
way too tight meditation. Then on the other side is the never noticing that thoughts have arisen. So in between there, all these experiences come up in between. And sometimes we have to lean a little bit more towards kind of straightening up, literally straightening up, putting a little bit more energy into our posture, a little more energy into the meditation. Sometimes relax the body more, relax the mind more. But when we move back and forth with that, then these varieties of things will come up. It's good to remember that like the word for meditation in Tibetan basically means familiarization. We're familiarizing ourselves with our mind. So having it turn out one way or another way is not so much the kind of the measure. There's not like one state, and that's meditation, and these other ones aren't meditation. The familiarization happens actually in seeing how all of this plays out. But when you look at something and you say, where'd it go? In that moment, actually, with experiences like that, there's no need to elaborate the question. It's just you relax right into that spot. Just relax with that, because the acuity is there, the presence is there, and there's no need to figure it out. I don't know that I actually got to whatever your question was, and maybe you didn't actually say exactly what the question was, but is that close enough?
Yes, I just wanted to. So that's So am I doing okay? That's what
Oh, if you just said that, I'd say yes, fine. Next question.
Of course. Of course you are.
Yeah, all of these things. This is good. These are the kinds of things that over time, it's good to actually talk with somebody so that there's some kind of point of reference. Yeah. Like the last time we talked, and I tried. We had a discussion, and you made this suggestion, and then I tried that out, and now this is happening. Now what? So that's kind of how that goes. So it's possible to say some things that might be helpful in a context like this, but when you do have a relationship with somebody to go into these things over time, then it could be a little bit more rich. I'll just say that. Right. So we can dedicate.
By this virtue may I quickly realize Mahamudra and establish all beings without exception in this state.
leave the cushions so that the next aspiring bodhisattva has a nice place to sit.